All right, let's get right into it. Today, we've got a philosophical showdown between two absolute giants of the 17th century, Baruch Spinoza and Gottfried Leibniz. And trust me, this isn't some dusty, old academic debate. This is a fight over the very nature of reality, of God, and, well, of you.
But first, let me ask you something. Think about your emotions. That flash of anger that makes your blood boil, or that wave of joy that feels like it's lifting you up. Are you really in control of them? Or, if you're being honest, do they sometimes control you? This is exactly the kind of deep human problem our first contender, Spinoza, was determined to solve.
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with Spinoza's mind-bending idea of a determined universe and his unique path to freedom. Then we'll bring in Leibniz and his bold response. After that, we'll put them head-to-head to really see the differences, and finally, we'll dive into the wild world of Leibniz's monads.
Okay, first up, Baruch Spinoza. Now, Spinoza put forward a vision of reality that was just breathtakingly radical. He argued that everything in existence, and I mean everything, from the most distant galaxy to the thought you're having right now, is all just one single unified thing, one substance. And he had a name for it, God or nature, same thing.
Now let's zoom in on how Spinoza saw emotions. For him, an emotion isn't just some fuzzy feeling in your head. No, it is a physical event, a bodily modification that literally changes your body's ability to act. Think about it. When you feel joy, you feel energized, more capable, right? Your active power increases. When you feel sadness, you feel drained, heavy. Your active power decreases. For Spinoza, emotions are written in the language of the body.
So, if the emotion is a physical thing, what's the feeling in your mind? This is where Spinoza's genius double aspect theory comes in. He says your body and mind don't cause each other to do things. It's not like your body gets sad and then tells your mind. Instead, they are two sides of the very same coin. A single event is happening in nature, and you experience it in two ways at the exact same time, as a physical state in your body and as a feeling in your mind. They run in perfect parallel.
Okay, you might be thinking, if everything is just physical causes and effects, are we just puppets on a string? It's a fair question, but for Spinoza, understanding this determinism is actually the key to becoming truly free. It's the way we escape what he calls the bondage of our own passions.
And he gives us a roadmap. He says we start out in bondage because our minds are full of confused, fuzzy ideas about why we feel what we feel. We're just reacting. The path to freedom, then, is to replace those confused ideas with clear, rational ones, to understand the true causes of our feelings and the world around us. A life of virtue, for Spinoza, is a life guided by this reason. And the ultimate goal, the highest state a person can reach, he calls it an intellectual love of God, a deep, profound understanding and acceptance of the perfect, necessary order of nature. That's true peace.
But here's a crucial catch. Spinoza's God isn't a personal God who listens to your prayers and loves you back. As he says, God does not love us. God loves himself through our loving him. Think about that. Since we are all just tiny parts of this giant system, God or nature, God can't love us like a father loves a child. When we reach that ultimate state of understanding, it's not us loving God, it's the entire system. God itself, coming to understand and appreciate its own perfection through our minds. It's a one-way street.
All right. Now, a lot of people heard Spinoza's ideas and got, well, a little uncomfortable. It felt cold, impersonal, deterministic. And this is where our second contender, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, steps into the ring. He saw a major problem and wanted to bring purpose, individuality, and a more recognizable God back to the center of philosophy.
You see, Leibniz just wasn't satisfied with a universe that was only about particles bumping into each other. This whole clockwork model of reality, he thought, left no room for the really important stuff, the human soul, free will, or a God who actually has a plan for the universe. His entire philosophy was this incredible attempt to build a new system that could make sense of modern science and our deepest need for meaning.
So how do these massive worldviews really stack up against each other? To really get a handle on it, let's put Spinoza and Leibniz side by side. And just for context, we'll throw in the other great rationalist Descartes to see how they all answered the biggest philosophical questions of their day.
Okay, let's break this chart down. First issue, is reality one thing or many things? Descartes said two, mind and matter. Spinoza said there's only one substance, period. But Leibniz, he went the other way and said there's an infinite number of substances. Next, the mind-body problem. Descartes thought they somehow interacted. Spinoza, as we saw, said they're two aspects of the same thing.
Leibniz offers a third way, parallelism. He says mind and body are like two perfect clocks, wound up by God at the beginning of time to run in perfect harmony without ever actually touching. And finally, freedom. Descartes said we have total free will. Spinoza said everything is determined. Leibniz again tries to find a middle path. He's a compatibilist. He says we are free when we act according to our own inner nature or purpose, even if that purpose was ultimately put there by God.
So if Leibniz's universe is made of an infinite number of substances, what in the world are they? This brings us to his most famous, his most unique, and let's be honest, his strangest idea, the monad.
Now this is absolutely crucial. A monad is not a tiny piece of physical stuff. It's not an atom. You can't see it, you can't cut it in half. It literally has no size or shape. A monad is a point of pure force. It's an indivisible unit of energy and perception. In Leibniz's incredible universe, everything, from a stone to a tree to your very soul, is made up of these living, energetic points.
And every single one of these monads has two key properties. First is appetition. You can think of this as its internal motor, its inner drive or will to move to the next state. It's the push. The second is apperception. This is its awareness, its perspective. Each monad is like a tiny, living mirror that reflects the entire universe, but it does so from its own unique point of view, with its own degree of clarity.
Leibniz then organizes all these monads into an amazing hierarchy of being. At the very bottom, you have bare monads. Their perception is so dim and confused that they just look like inanimate objects to us, like a rock or a clod of dirt. A step up, you get soul monads, which make up the souls of animals. They have memory and feeling. Then you have spirit monads. That's us. We have reason and self-consciousness. And at the very top of this cosmic ladder is the supreme monad. That's God, who perceives everything in the universe with perfect and total clarity, and who set the whole harmonious system in motion.
So in the end, we're left with two absolutely profound and competing visions of reality. On one hand, you have Spinoza's universe, a single, unified, logical substance, where freedom is found in understanding the whole system. On the other, you have Leibniz's universe, an infinite chorus of individual souls, each one a unique perspective on reality, all harmonized by a divine conductor. So the question I want to leave you with is this: which reality resonates more with you? The one single substance, or the infinite chorus of perspectives?